welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael, and I want to thank everyone for joining us on this journey into the unknown. And tonight's guest I have is someone I am so excited to have on because the topics that we had talked about when we were agreeing to do the show are a couple of topics that have been on my mind a lot, and I think a lot of people would be interested in as well. And she is so much more than just those topics, so don't be surprised if we go off script and into different topics. But I am so blessed, so privileged, and honored beyond words to welcome Cynthia Sue Larson to the show.
Oh, thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Love that intro for the show. Boy, that sounds epic,
Well, thank you. So, for those who, may just be new to what's going on in the world or the esoterics or, hidden information, what could you describe what exactly you do in your books?
Yeah, my books are basically all about mind-matter interaction. So I've written about energy fields, the human aura. That was one of my first books, was Aura Advantage. And I've also got a little ebook, Shine with the Aura of Success. And I've also got a meditation CD, Aura Healing Meditations. So the energy field thing is very important. And I'm tuned into levels of conscious agency, which we might think of as the chakras inside the body. And then there's also levels of conscious agency above and outside the body as well. So I'm really interested in that, as well as the very practical level, spiritual, scientific fusion, really bringing it together of how mind-matter interaction operates, why it matters, what we're doing with it, each and every one of us, when we experience synchronicities, when we have deja vu, when we experience reality shifts, which is a huge thing I write about. I've got a book called Reality Shifts, When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. And then I delve into quantum jumps, which is another side of that same phenomenon. So reality shifting, quantum jumping, they're very analogous. And then I love the topic of the Mandela effect. Again, extremely related to these other two. They're not unrelated. All of these topics fit together. So, and then I work with spiritual life coaching and mentoring, and I lead workshops and retreats like I'll be doing this month, May, in Crestone, Colorado, in conjunction with Starworks USA. And that's Paula Harris, who's been a UFO researcher for decades.
Wow, I thought I was busy.
And then the International Mandela Effect Conference, I was a co-founder and I'm one of the board members of, and we're planning our next in-person conference, which will be November 7th through the 10th in Nashville, Tennessee. And you'll be able to purchase tickets anytime. I think right now we've got the links up on our YouTube channel, and we're redoing the website, but pretty soon it'll be, I think it's on the website right now too.
All right. And all the links I have for Cynthia are in the description. So you can find, if you want to check out the YouTube channel or find anywhere that she's at, they are there for you. And I noticed your book you have out on quantum jumps.
Yes.
What when you say quantum jumps, are you meaning quantum as in timeline shifts or parallel timelines, or where are you getting quantum jumping?
The term quantum jumps is actually a physics term, which I describe in the book Quantum Jumps. So then I take that terminology, which is originally intended for the so-called realm of the quantum particles and waves. In other words, below the Planck constant, in the realm, the super teeny tiny realm of small components of reality, the building blocks that are atoms and photons and so forth. But then in the book, I'm basically showing that these quantum jumps where there's a leap from one energy phase, and there are shells. If you studied chemistry or physics, when I did back in the 60s and 70s, we had these little models of atoms. And, we'd have the nucleus with the proton and the neutron inside the nucleus of the atom. And then there would be electrons zooming around, in their little orbit. And so the quantum jump is actually an orbital jump from an electron making a shift from one orbit to another energy level in that atom. And it was observed with the human eye, which means we are able to witness quantum jumps, even the ones that physicists have long been talking about. And then, yes, to answer your question, I am next taking that concept and saying that this is applying to every level of physical being. In other words, myself, I can make a quantum jump. I can experience, for example, spontaneous remission of a broken bone or a broken finger or a cut or a burn or a cancer, pretty much anything, and experience those things. And I write about many of these in my books, Reality Shifts and Quantum Jumps, shifts that I've observed myself and quantum jumps that others have made as well. And it's unlimited what can happen, what we're capable of. We're much more capable of this mind matter interaction than most of us realize.
Right. And when I'm hearing this, I'm thinking of the term that's being thrown out a lot in metaphysics. They call it quantum entanglement.
Yes.
And it's like, when you have two opposing forces that are extremely far apart being drawn together, is the basic understanding I have from what I've researched about it. Would that be similar to like watching the quantum jump as you're describing it as an entanglement fulfilling itself?
Oh, there's a relationship there. The quantum entanglement idea that I like to illustrate, it's also what Albert Einstein referred to as spooky action at a distance, because an entangled pair of quantum particles, one might be spin up, the other one spin down. And like you said, they can be separated by meters or miles, quite a distance apart from one another. And what can happen is when you make a measurement on one of them and you see that, oh, this one's up right now, then this one's down. If one of them, if they switch, they both switched. That's entanglement. So it's like that instantaneous across. They could be on opposite sides of the universe, and one would be up and the other one would be down. And so it can provide the ability for us to know something that's almost seemingly unknowable. And then to tie it back into the quantum jumping idea, it is connected in the sense that this entanglement that we have enables us to operate like we're in cahoots with other conscious agents, for example, that might be some distance away from us. So it enables us to make a coordinated quantum jump, so that there's that the entanglement can be part of how those of us who are entangled through a deep feeling of connection, collaboration, which is how you see people experience synchronicities together, miracles together, that kind of thing. These kind of things are possible to make these quantum jumps, not just by yourself, but I think it's more fun when you have these jumps and you experience it with others. So it's not just you saying, did anyone else see that? And nobody else saw anything. That's not much fun.
So I'm curious, and I'm going to kind of tie this into a topic that we were talking about backstage and you brought up, is so say you had two people involved in a quantum jump. Are both aware, or is one aware? And because one's aware of the change and not the other, is that what we're witnessing with the Mandela effects?
Yeah, we do actually see that with the Mandela effect, where not everyone agrees that they've all seen the Berens. Maybe not everyone remembers Berenstein Bears or Berenstein. Maybe to them, like one person says, "Oh, it's always been Stain. Nothing changed. What are you talking about?" But the other person says, "Are you kidding? That's like the big thing for me. That's how I know the Mandela effect is real." And so what's interesting is you'll have people that it's like they're from some people jokingly, or maybe they're serious, they say, which reality are you from? Which timeline are you from? Do you have the Berenstein or the Berenstain Bears? Where are the kidneys for you? Where's your heart? Do you remember, which part of the Milky Way is the solar system in? Are we near the center? Are we out somewhere in the boonies? Which kind of VW logo do you remember? And just all these different things. Is it mirror, mirror on the wall, or magic mirror on the wall? But really, I think fixating on that kind of stuff, it's fun for a while, and you can try to see like, oh, I match with these other people to a certain degree. But I think it's sort of a fool's errand to try to match it exactly, because we're each of us subjective observers. We're each having a unique experience, and that's part of our journey, is not to be identical with everyone else. Just the fact that we can say, I think for sure I'm observing the Mandela effect. I've seen too many things. Like for me, Thanksgiving Thursday totally changed because I set up a day to celebrate International Aura Awareness Day, making sure that it would not interfere with American Thanksgiving. And then American Thanksgiving moved. So I'm laughing because every year it's like, it's exactly clobbering it again. And no one's really going to be in America serious about celebrating International Aura Awareness Day because it's made the misfortune of, Thanksgiving moved to, to be closer to Christmas, which it didn't used to be. It used to be the third Thursday in November. And so I put International Aura Awareness Day, the fourth Saturday. So it should be fully clear of that whole Thanksgiving, but no, it's not. It's
I love how our holidays, we just randomly move them around, and everyone's like, oh, it's always been this way. I'm like, no, it hasn't.
Seriously? I know. And I've heard people that say, I know that's not right, because one person said that was my birthday. It's like it was always, it's like now my birthday is different than Thanksgiving, and it used to be the same. It would correspond pretty often. I mean, it wouldn't be exact, but it would be much closer. Because that third Thursday thing or fourth Thursday now, it's kind of scoots around, like Easter scoots around. Yeah. And even the equinoxes move around strangely.
They do, and
yeah,
that's supposed to be natural law, and so I don't know how that gets changed by mankind. But then again, we created time zones, which that's a nightmare.
True.
I'm curious, when we say, Mandela effect or Mandala effect, I have been asked so many times this, and I say my definition is something that you can prove is there, but somebody else says no. And my example is, you have a receipt with the Fruit of the Loom logo having a cornucopia, but Fruit of the Loom company saying, we have never since our beginning had a cornucopia on our logo. And I'm like, how do we have a receipt being with the symbol that you say was never there? To me, that's an effect. When someone says like Fruit Loops, did they change the name? And I'm like, companies change their name. That could be just simply change their name. So how do you view what is and is not the effect?
Well, for me, these are misaligned memories. We don't always get the kind of proof that you might hope for. Like when the physiological body parts move, sometimes we get some proof, like the kidneys, or they've relocated upwards. They're much safer under the rib cage than they used to be. To the point, they used to be like, if you put your hands over your kidneys, you put your hands over your lower back, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, and I remember the kidney punch, making sure that, you don't want to punch somebody there because the kidneys are very vulnerable, and the person might start, having blood in their urine. It could be deadly. It could be very serious. But now the kidney punch concept doesn't make any sense, because the kidneys have physically lifted up, and trying to find any proof of that they were where we remember them, it's kind of challenging. It can be done, but I don't necessarily need proof of a written or a recorded nature to lock down the fact, like, okay, this is definitely a Mandela effect. For me, it's enough if there are a group of people that it could even be two people or it could be one person if it's just one person observing it, which is basically a reality shift or personal Mandela effect. And maybe that one person knows for sure that they never had a light switch on that side of the wall, and no electrician visited their house. Nobody did anything. I've seen huge changes happen to houses, like my next door neighbor's house. They had leaf guards put in on all their gutters, and then they all vanished. And it was like it was so strange. Like something appeared on the house that had never been there, lasted for about a week or two, and then it was gone again as mysteriously as it arrived. And in my own house, I've had my silk curtains that I shrank because I washed them in hot water decades ago. Like I was just annoyed by it a few years ago, and then suddenly they were 2 inches taller and they fit the window exactly. So it's like weird stuff like that can happen. One person can be the observer. It doesn't need to be a group of people, but it's just a mismatched memory from what you remember and what you're observing. When my silk curtains grew, it's like overnight, 2 inches longer, they didn't fit the hardware anymore. I had to redo all of the curtain hardware because it suddenly was the correct length again. Whereas for like 20 years, it had been too short after they shrunk, 20 years ago.
And it's amazing when that happens that we just sit there and go, oh, okay. Well, right. I got to do this now. We don't sit there and go, wait a minute, how did this change?
Yes. And that's what I like people to think about, because if we question our beliefs, I think that's what the purpose of all this is. When you look at reality shifts and the Mandela effect, quantum jumps, all of that invites us, I think, to start thinking about the nature of reality. What is reality? And is it as solid as it seems? Quantum physics would say, no, it's not as solid as it seems. And there's a lot of not just spooky action at a distance with that entanglement where it's instantaneously communicating with another entity, but there's also things like quantum teleportation, which is extraordinary, where you can just suddenly be in a different place, like make that quantum jump physically. And people have experienced that, being suddenly transported to safety. This happens a lot more than you might think it does. Lots of other things can happen, like superposition of states. You've heard of the Schrodinger's cat that's both alive and dead, sort of. Right. In that, yeah. We can experience parallel possible adjacent realities that way. You can sort of feel like you're sort of in two realities. And that is a trippy sensation. And we're capable of experiencing it and playing with it. And to me, that's what all of these phenomena are doing, is inviting us, come in and think about this. Question things that you might have just beliefs about, but maybe those beliefs are outdated. They're based on materialistic science that is very much outmoded right now.
All right. Stones of Destiny has commented, we used to drive through Cameroon, Arizona to St. George for years. 2 years ago, it changed to Cameron, and the sign is different and on the other side of the street. Wow. So I'm just, stuff like that, I would have to sit there and go, did the city vote to change its name, or was there never a vote and the sign is different? That, to me, that's where I'm like, I question is that an effect or not? Because if the city voted to change it, that's not an effect. Whereas if there is no, hey, we're changing the name notification or asking to change the name, then yeah, I would view that as an effect. How about you?
Yeah, well, let's take the case of Bolton in England. There's a little township named Bolton, Bolton, and the townsfolk in that city or village, town, whatever, they had a museum there. And at some point, the people that were, parents now, they were wondering what happened to the museum dinosaur that I remember when I was a child. I'd go to the museum and it greeted me in the natural science part of the exhibit. Maybe we assume that the dinosaur has gone out for repairs, but I think it's high time to come back, because now I've got my kids, my grandchildren. It's been gone for years. What the heck is happening? Let's bring the dinosaur back. So that's what the and including some of the city council members and the high level, fathers and mothers of the city. What's interesting about this is that the official history showed there was never any dinosaur at the museum in Bolton, none. But when they did a survey, I think the radio station and the newspaper did a survey to find out, well, this is weird. Why, how many people here in the city of Bolton believe that they saw that dinosaur when they were little, or they think we have one? It was about 50-50. About half of the populace of this little town of Bolton in England seriously believed that they had a dinosaur, and the other half either weren't sure, or like, I don't know what you guys are talking about. But to get such a large number when the official history showed there was never a dinosaur there, it was so vexing for the people, including, like I said, the city council folk, that they went ahead and purchased a dinosaur in the configuration and to look like what they all remembered. They had a shared memory of what that missing dinosaur looked like when there was no record, zero record, no photos, no journals, nothing except people's memories. And I would say that totally counts. So, and now now they've got a dinosaur.
Yeah, I would agree, because I mean, especially when you say, dinosaur, someone could be picturing a T-Rex, someone a raptor, somebody a brachiosaur, brontosaurus.
Yep.
There's
or the flying one, the one with the wings. Yeah, pterodactyl.
Yeah. And so if they're all describing the same one, to me, that would be like, that's an impossibility.
Yes.
That everyone would be picking the same thing.
Yes, that's how we know we've got some real phenomenon going on here, that we've got the entangled minds where so many people have that same memory, that same dinosaur used to be there in the town of Bolton, to the point that it was so upsetting, like, we need this dinosaur back for our children. What's taking so long? And like, what? And then they can't believe, like, we never had a dinosaur? No. We all remember what it looked like. Okay, let's go buy one. Let's get one. We need our dinosaur.
Especially to come up with the funds for that. It's like, yeah, we're going to tax the people.
That was not cheap.
For a dino that never existed.
But it was like pitchforks and, bonfires. It's like they were just really upset. Like, where is the dinosaur? What have you done with it?
Yeah. So Stones of Destiny responded with, I thought about that, but the cost would be too much to change all the paperwork for the city of Cameroon to Cameron and the post office, etc. So I highly doubt they would do that. That's true, but, in the world we live in, it's hard to not put it past a city to do that.
But it's something we can check, though, Michael.
Yeah.
And I love the point Stones of Destiny is making, because it's something we can totally investigate, and you can check it out and see, is there any official history or record that the city changed its name? And if not, I would count that we've got a definite Mandela effect. And there are people noticing Mandela effects with their own hometowns, even buildings moving, names changing. So this wouldn't be the first time that's happened. And certainly if you're driving through it and you're always using that as a landmark, then you're familiar with seeing it. And it's kind of shocking to notice, like, when did it go from Cameroon, which totally sounds different, than Cameron, which is like someone's name. Well, they both could, I guess, be a name, but they're very different.
Yeah, I actually went and looked it up, and it says in 1916 it was established as Cameron.
So 1916, okay.
Right.
But wait a minute, the name changed within this lifetime. I'm sure Stones of Destiny, I bet you Stones of Destiny wasn't born before 1916, right?
Right. So I would say Stones of Destiny, you got an effect.
Whoa, yeah, that counts. That's like time traveling or something. But it sounds like it didn't look unusual that the name Cameroon wasn't on some 1890 style road sign. That would look weird, because I've heard from people who've traveled back in time, and they've seen things like like very ancient technology and stuff.
Yeah. Since 1961, lots of laughs. So
that is hilarious. And you said it was 1916, Michael, and 1961 is like transposed. That's cool.
Right. That's actually true. I didn't even think about that till you said it, that the last two numbers are reciprocal.
Very cool.
Trick of the mind.
Yeah, totally. But I love the fact that Stones of Destiny is alert and paying attention, and thanks for sharing that with us. 'Cause
Yeah. And
it,
anyone else in the audience that's watching, if you have one that you want to ask if about,
and
bring
I
it
re-
up.
and I report these every month on my Reality Shifters newsletter that's free, and it's now I've moved it over to Substack. It was previously, I just changed who sends the newsletter out, but all the issues are archived on the realityshifters.com website. And then also at the International Mandela Effect Conference YouTube channel, every month we have a live stream, and we also go through some of the new Mandela effects each month, which include sometimes extinct species coming back after tens, hundreds, or thousands of years, or tens of thousands of years. So we're getting some really ancient things coming back that didn't used to be here before. I think that counts as a Mandela effect too. It's like we should have noticed the coelacanth fish, for example, which is gigantic. It's much bigger than a person. People thought they were completely extinct, and they look like dinosaurs. They look super, super ancient. I mean, they are prehistoric fish for sure, but they're not gone. But they were gone. So they were extinct, but now they're not. And there was also a giant Galapagos tortoise that came back. We've had lots of tiny clams that have been gone for 10,000 years off the coast of California. They're back. It's just like every month there's some new species that's come back from oblivion, which is very similar to Nelson Mandela having died in Robben's, prison when he was incarcerated there in South Africa. And then he was alive again, which is where we get the name for the Mandela effect.
And I found it interesting that they used that event because there have been reports of him being back to the 1700s. And it's like, why is it? And maybe you can help understand this. Why did, everybody just blindly accept until Nelson Mandela that we were like, hey, we got to name this effect? And
Yeah.
because somewhere I saw, and a friend pointed out on another episode, it was a newspaper journalist coined the name. What's your take on it? Do you think that's true, or where do you think the name of the effect comes from?
Well, I'd go with the official story that it's popularized by Fiona Broome, who may have, I don't know if she or the people that she was talking to at that convention. I think it was like a science fiction Dragon Con convention, maybe about games and science fiction, and they were just talking, and they amongst themselves noticed like, hey, it's kind of weird. Nelson Mandela's alive again. He was dead, now he's alive. Alive again is what I was calling it when I wrote my book Reality Shifts in 1999, and I published it and talked about Larry Hagman being alive again. He had died and then he was alive again, and I put myself right on the line saying this totally happened. I saw all of his the TV, the newspaper coverage of the who, he was J.R. Ewing on Dallas. You're from Texas, so
Oh, yeah.
it was a big deal. Like, I live in California, but everybody was watching that show. He was on I Dream of Jeannie. So I saw him die. I mean, not personally, but I saw the TV coverage. It was a tragic story that Larry Hagman had passed on. And then, like, not too long after, like a week or two later, then I'm reading a newspaper story that he's successfully recovered from surgery. And I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like, and I've met at least one other person who remembers Larry Hagman. So that was back in the 80s, the 80s and 90s. So that predates this whole 2000, whatever experience with Nelson Mandela. So the first in-print coverage of a person being back alive again, I would say that was Larry Hagman. But I don't really like the name the Hagman effect. So I'll go with Mandela.
He's already got a building named for him. We don't need an effect.
That's funny. Yeah, but I like the term alive again, and I like to consider this a reality shift. That's what I was calling it. And there have been other people studying the same phenomenon, actually. Mary Rose Barrington, for example, she was living in the United Kingdom, and she was a certified, I don't know if she called herself a parapsychologist or a metaphysician or what, but she was studying something that she called just one of those things, where objects would appear, disappear, transform, and transport, and I don't think she covered people being alive again, but it's the same thing. What I'm noticing is when we're experiencing one moment, we're in one reality, and the next we're experiencing another, like it was a parallel reality that we've somehow jumped into, moved into, shifted into. That's where the similarity comes together for quantum jumps, reality shifts, and the Mandela effect. They've got tremendous commonality there.
And, when you look at the quantum level, we're starting to understand in science that there are parallel universes. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make it hard to believe that there could be parallel timelines where we're living different scenarios in different universes at the same time.
Yeah. Like, have
And,
you talked to like someone, a childhood friend or something, and notice they're telling you something that happened and you don't remember it? Is that ever, or you might be remembering something and they're like, what are you talking about?
right.
And it's not just forgetting. And when you rule out, like, what if they're not forgetting or you're not forgetting? What if you actually experience something different?
That's where I was going with is there are a lot of people that are saying the universe or multiverse is connecting itself at a quantum level to where timelines are merging to where we're going to have one timeline. And so it started me thinking if parallel universes are merging into one, if, like you're saying, Larry Hagman passed away, but in another timeline he's still alive, could he shift in and just, exist? Or, and then everyone's like, hey, Larry's back. Or, and everyone's like, well, we never remember him leaving because he's here. He couldn't have left, and it really makes you question, if a universe combines and timelines combine, and we all know there's going to be momentary of confusion as everything coalesces and becomes one fluid memory. But it also begs the question, why do some still remember the other and not the, or remember the current, not the other? Why would we not all shift and keep the memory? Why? How does it pick and choose?
Yeah, that gets into quantum physics, really. But going back to what you were saying about the multiverse, I love that because this is where the mind matter interaction for me becomes reality. So it's not just a tiny microscopic quantum jump that's the original definition of the term in physics, but instead, the many worlds of quantum physics are one and the same as the cosmos and its multiverse. People may not be aware that those are very different things, but the many worlds, like that Hugh Everett III, the physicist, was conceptualizing in the form of a quantum interpretation to explain all of this spooky action at a distance, that entanglement, the coherence, the quantum teleportation, all the bizarre stuff that goes on. That's the many worlds interpretation, that there can be these many possible worlds. Now, what's brilliant is when a physicist comes along and says, okay, what if these many worlds of quantum physics are indeed one and the same as the cosmological multiverse? And that's what we're looking at, I believe. So it's kind of bringing together a theory of everything in a sense, even though we don't yet have an agreed upon quantum interpretation. But this is why when people are noticing Kirk Douglas dying over and over and over again, because sometimes it's not just that they die once and then they're alive and then they die again. It can happen. I'm picking on Kirk Douglas because he's one people say, like, wait a minute, Didn't he die? In fact, didn't he die like 3 times now? And what, he's still alive? I'm glad, but what the heck?
Well,
So,
and one of the things that's confusing too that I have noticed that was prolific on Facebook is they would be like, "Oh, see these celebrities who has died, in such and such year," and they'll have a picture of an actor on there, and so your mind goes to that actor died, so you're watching, and they're never listed in there,
oh no.
but it's like, wait a minute,
Clickbait.
you have a picture of this person, so now are they dead or not? And so everyone starts looking up and going, "Oh my God, so and so died," and they're like, "No, I'm still here."
Right. Well,
But Facebook made us believe they had died.
yeah, that kind of stuff does happen. But I think what's more interesting is looking at, I don't know if you follow Rizwan Virk, but he's written some absolutely amazing books. He wrote the autobiography of a yogi, which, I mean, sort of revisiting. He didn't write the original book because that book is old. So
Right.
I can't remember the name that he gave his book. It's blanking on it right now. But he basically was revisiting some of the top, most amazing experiences that happened in Autobiography of a Yogi from the perspective, because he did a follow-up book on basically the Mandela effect and the fact that we might be living in a simulation, which is a way of saying in a dream. That would be the language of the Autobiography of a Yogi. It would be saying everything is a dream. We're dreaming right now. This is a dream. We can awaken within the dream. And so the kind of stories that happen in Autobiography of a Yogi would be a visitor arriving in the town that wants to talk with a great master. But he arrives at the home where the master would be, and someone had already left or just sent this telepathic message. And it's like it's communicated along the lines of what we're saying is that, remember the spooky action at a distance, the entanglement, that message just went bloop and went right through. So the master already knows there's a visitor at the house and had already been making arrangements to come back home, so that he arrived pretty much exactly at the right time for the visitor. It's kind of impossible. It's like, how did you get here so fast, and how did you know, and what the heck is going on here? That is the realm of the Mandela effect also, where we recognize it's like we're in a simulation. It's like we're in the game, and we're kind of the pawns in the game, but we're also the players. And when you realize that, like, oh, this is my avatar body, Cynthia the mortal, but I'm also the key player, the consciousness that's running this whole show, that's where it gets super exciting.
So I'm going to make a leap right now, and I'm curious your thoughts on the leap is right now we're having the Schumann resonance is going off the charts, and sometimes it's really low or blacks out or whites out.
Yeah.
It's just all over the map. Could the Schumann resonance be affecting our minds, and that is partly too why some people who are more attuned to the resonance have more effects than others?
Yeah, that's a theory that's been put forward, and I think there's something to it, because it's definitely a correlation there between activity in the Schumann resonance and then seeing subsequent Mandela effects that happen like right in that same time period of intense Schumann activity. And that's been tracked by a couple of our board members, Jerry Darkwolf Hicks, and I think Shane Robinson, and Christopher Anatra. Those guys have been looking at that definitely to see. There seems like there's a connection there.
Yeah. And for those who aren't aware,
what is the Schumann resonance? Yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. There's something called the ionosphere around the Earth, and you can think of it like there's this, there's the atmosphere around the Earth, of course, but there's a sort of a zone where activity such as lightning, thunder, electromagnetic effects in the Earth's atmosphere that are constantly happening are sort of ringing the Earth like a bell. It's kind of creating a reverb. And usually in the before time, like 20, 30 years ago, back when the sun was yellow instead of white, and, back when things were different, we have to go like 30 years back to those times. Back in those days, the Schumann resonance was pretty steady. around like 8 hertz, which is the perfect ideal frequency for healing for the human body. And it matched also the frequency like of the earth herself. So it was extremely healing and relaxing. But now with so much activity, you can think of it like lots more lightning, lots more energetic effects in the ionosphere. It's it's changing the way those human resonance images look like. They used to be just beautifully kind of steady, not flatlining, but they'd be rippling around, you know, the 8 hertz level. Now they just whoosh, you know, it's like the whole thing goes white, and it just like it's like a white out, like you said, going up to some super high frequencies. And people who are sensitive to those frequencies feel maybe that they're getting downloads, that they're getting upgrades, that they're experiencing transformation of some of the physical capabilities and things they can do. I just did a video about the human evolutionary upgrades that I've been noticing, and some other people noticing as well. Yeah, maybe I could go into that.
And so, the human resonance is like the frequency of the planet. What, you know, and it falls back to, again, what is it about, you know, people, you know, more attuned, you know, to what nature and what's going on, having a bigger impact with it? Is it, as some people say, you know, part of the ascension process, or, you know, what is it that causes really people to get sick or get, you know, totally out of whack?
Right.
Because the earth has just raised its frequency a little bit or a lot.
Yeah.
You know, how does that, what is it about our bodies that is like affected by that?
Oh boy, that's a huge question. Well, we have a subtle energy body. You know, if you've ever gone for acupuncture, chiropractic, or pressure point therapy, all these, or Reiki, or any kind of energy healing modality, then you've been hopefully the recipient of some good healing energy, and maybe you've felt for yourself what that feels like. And for people who are very energy sensitive and they're very tuned into their subtle energy body, I'm thinking, you know, I have a friend, excuse me, Melinda Iverson and she's doing energy updates on her YouTube channel because she's feeling these energies coming through before they hit. And then she's able to give people some advice, like, okay, this feels like there could be some nausea coming between these dates. It'll be next week. So you might want to prepare in advance, get some grounding stones, for example, or some, you know, various things to do that will keep you, you know, be in nature, that kind of thing. So she'll have very specific advice for what she's feeling is coming in. And it seems like we're definitely hitting that time frame right now, because these upgrades are not necessarily effortlessly received. And some people are feeling, I've talked to one woman who was feeling a lot of pain from some of this ascension energy coming through, because she had an injury that was not fully healed. And this is extremely important to be aware, you know, because some people are just saying like, bring it on. And I would not, I like to ask a question called, how good can it get? And so basically I would recommend apply that to everything. Like, okay, bring on ascension energies. How good can it get? What you're doing is you're hopefully smoothing out what could otherwise be a very rough ride, because these energies can hit a part of your body, for example, that's not fully healed, and it can be excruciating. Hopefully not, but if you bring in like, how good can it get, and follow people like Melinda Iverson with her channel on YouTube, then it can be smoothed out.
So I actually, that brings up a good question. That from my own experiences, I have a leg that I had surgery done on years ago, and I have these 2 quantum healing devices on me that have totally, like, I feel like reconnected the nerve, and I no longer have that numb feeling from when the nerve was cut. But then there are days when, even when I'm wearing that, it's like, man, my leg feels like it's going through the same thing as before everything,
Yeah.
and it passes.
Good.
Could that be that the Schumann resonance is, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah. Well, the Schumann resonance is just showing us what's going on. It's basically a reflection of the electromagnetic activity in the ionosphere, which in itself is connected with the reduction of the Earth's magnetic field, which is it's gone down, I don't know, 25-30%. It's dropping rapidly from what it used to be in the mid 1800s. So as the shields are dropping, it sounds like Star Trek, then the Earth is receiving a lot more of that very strong activity from the sun and also the galactic center, the cosmos. So we're getting a lot more cosmic rays, a lot more stuff coming in. And the stuff coming from the center of the cosmos is part of the upgrade information that's coming through for humans. But again, we can be because the shields are down and it's coming through stronger than it ever has, and the sun is in an active cycle right now. It can be a lot for some of us to kind of come up to speed and adapt to what we need to do energetically to continue staying healthy, staying balanced for those injured areas that maybe haven't yet fully healed. They're still coming along, but I think the intention that you have and your intention matters a lot. Just the fact that you've got the quantum devices, you're intending healing for yourself. Thank goodness. So then it might be unpleasant, but then you're going to feel like, okay, it's okay again. Thank goodness.
right? And I can really tell when, like, you have to charge them up, and I can tell when one has the battery life for the day has used up, or when it says I no longer have any battery power, and you have to plug it in. I can tell because I'll be like doing something else, and I'll be like, wait a minute, why am I feeling this effect? And
yeah.
My other question too about that is, if we're healing on the quantum level, how, if it's healed, does it come back? What causes like the sensations to come back? And the reason why I say sensations is, like I was saying, when I feel like my leg is sore, it's not sore because I haven't like hit it with anything or bumped anything, but it's sore for like say 6 hours. That's not an injury. That is memory or something. And so what causes, if it's been healed at the quantum level, that the body goes, hey, wait a minute, we're gonna remind you of this pain, and then let it pass, and then remind you again some other time. Why does it do that?
Well, every case is individual, obviously. For chronic situations, which I think this qualifies because it's been a number of months or years, then the goal for quantum healing to get an optimal effect would be to make a quantum connection to an adjacent possible reality that's in a homeostasis in the pattern of before any injury occurred whatsoever. So that would be optimal. But often that's not what happens when we're doing quantum healing, either because the person receiving the healing has some sort of a mental block, or it's impossible for them to recognize that would be even a thing that you can make a quantum jump to a homeostasis reality where there'd been zero trace of that injury at all. It never happened. So to imagine that, you need Zen mind, beginner's mind, to be able to clear your mind of all expectation. The one thing I recommend when people are doing any kind of healing modality is to include an intention that whatever's interfering with receiving full and complete healing, which would be a return to homeostatic perfection, if you will, before any trace of injury. You want to have anything that's interfering removed. And that's a bold statement because that does include our ego, where we think, I know what's going on. I have understanding. I've got my pet beliefs. That has to go out probably in order to receive the fullness of that kind of a full quantum jump. You need to be willing to courageously let that go, because that belief is interfering with your ability to recognize what if you can make a jump to a completely healthy homeostatic reality, regardless what's happened so far. Like you made a partial jump and you're experiencing a few blips here and there. That's kind of like you jump to a reality where it's kind of healed, but it's, it's like you've got the situation with the body part that can tell the barometric pressure, and you know if a storm is coming in. And probably don't want that. You feel like, okay, maybe I don't need that. Exactly, you don't need that.
All right.
So it takes that total ability to throw out all of the beliefs altogether.
Okay. RD is just simply saying he played in freshwater streams all his life. At 50, discovered a bright blue orange darter that looks like it should be in tropical waters. Can't believe after decades just noticing this.
Oh wow, that sounds cool. It's like the kind of thing we've been tracking on our. We have a show called Open Tables, and that's where the live stream we cover not just the Lazarus species that are coming back from extinction and being dead for tens of thousands or millions of years, but also things like this darter. Exactly. It's like, where did this come from? Now, obviously, the skeptics out there are going to be, wait a minute, Cynthia, what if somebody decided they're going to stock this stream with this new fish? Like, okay, you can investigate that, check that out, see if that happened. But probably if that's a place you go, you would have heard about that. I would say, when you're buying your fishing supplies or you're talking to other fishermen, you'd be discussing, like, whoa, what do you think of those new darters? But if you're not hearing that, if it didn't show up in the news, if you do a search on the internet to see, is this a new thing? Did someone stock the waterway with that? And if they didn't, then that's exactly the kind of thing we're noticing with all kinds of birds, fish, mammals, you name it.
Well, and the other thing too is tropical water is not necessarily the same as fresh water. Up here, I'm assuming RD you're in America or the northern hemisphere where it's not so tropical. The fish, if you added tropical fish, would take a while for their systems to adapt. So they couldn't just appear and be like, okay, yeah, we're doing great, we're gonna thrive. No, it would have had to have been there a few cycles to where they're like, hey, this is our new system.
We're seeing some weird stuff, I'll tell you. I mean, we saw rainbow animals, like a giant rainbow squirrel that I'd never seen before. And so it's like, these are the kind of things we're covering on our International Mandela Effect Conference live streams each month. It's weird. And so a tropical fish in non-tropical waters, that's like exactly the kind of thing we're looking at. Like, what the heck? And that's the kind of, we would, if that's one that someone submits to us, because often viewers will tell us, look at this, have you ever heard of this? And if we've got the species named, then we'll check it out and see what the official story, the official history is. And often these things don't make a lot of sense. It's like what this person's saying, what RD is saying. It's just like, that wasn't there before, and it looks tropical. And why wouldn't you have noticed it before too? It really stands
especially
out.
being bright blue and orange. I don't imagine that being hard to miss.
And we're seeing so much of that kind of thing where it doesn't even make sense for the animal or the plant to hide. Usually in nature, you've got this camouflage system. And so if there's like that wild coloration, it's going to stand out to the kingfishers, to the birds that are going to, or all the predators are going to see it easily. So it doesn't make logical sense at all.
So we're approaching the top of the hour. Do you have time for another question or two? Or
yeah, if people have questions, sure.
One question I have, and I don't know if you're familiar enough with the tech to answer or not, is we've been kind of talking about some healing on quantum levels. There's some talk about med beds where you can lay in the bed and quantum computing and scans the body and says, okay, we're now restoring you back to a certain age. Is that something that you've heard about and come across and fits? And is that kind of fitting in the like shift that we're talking about, where it scans and says, "Oh, here's this lifetime where you don't have any of these issues. We're gonna pull that and put it here and override what's here and clear that out."
I don't. I've heard the term med bed, but I don't know how fully it returns a person to the homeostasis I was talking about, which would be a parallel possible adjacent reality where you've got homeostasis is important. It's the idea that you're, completely back to full, internal harmony within all levels of your conscious agency. And I don't know if those med beds are doing that or not. So I can't really answer that. Just off the top of my gut feelings, that feels like that's intriguing. But I guess I'm also skeptical. I'd want to know, is this part of hopefully not the transhumanist agenda? Because I tend to prefer much more of a natural approach, much more of indigenous wisdom and a recognition and appreciation of our relationship with all of nature. That would be my preferred healing path.
Yeah. From what I've heard, is the objective is, like, for example, I'm 46. If I was to lay in the med bed, the objective of the med bed is to put me back to the body to like age 30. Or, if you're in your 70s, your body would be restored back to age 30. For some reason, everyone that talks about the med bed says age 30 is where the body is supposed to be restored to. And so that's why I was wondering if it's scanning the timelines and going, hey, here's a 30-year-old, totally fine, scan it, override.
I think it sounds like they're picking it. Yeah, like that's a time when the body's holding together pretty well before stuff starts falling apart. Maybe. Yeah. Good question. I don't know.
Well, I'm glad they didn't say a teenager, because I don't think I could go through teenage years again.
No, that'd be a nightmare for a lot of people. Like, no.
Yeah. I almost wonder too if like they're picking age 30 because even in our 20s we still were like kind of making some foolish mistakes, and still had that I'm invincible kind of mentality.
Yeah.
Age 30, we're kind of more of the, hey, I'm more chill. I don't need to do all that nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
Stones of Destiny is back and says, I literally just watched a video where they said, we worry about our DNA being sold and used. Do we really want our quantum imprint available to the highest bidder?
Good question.
Oh, that was about medbeds.
Okay. Well, it makes me wonder about the intention behind it and what are they doing with it. I don't really know who's running it or what's involved, so I can't really address it. It sounds like it's been sort of like a flying car thing to me so far. By that I mean flying cars exist. There are prototypes out there, but they're not yet available for everybody, and there's going to be a lot of issues to work out before everyone can own a flying car without having traffic jams or air collisions or who knows what.
Yeah,
so
that's what I was thinking too. We have a hard enough time driving on the ground. Now we're going to have stoplights hovering in the air.
We can do it, but who's running it? What's involved? How does it work? We have some details to smooth out, and that sounds like the case for medbeds too. Whose data are they using? Who's running the show? What is the actual intent? What's really going on with it? And I don't know.
From what I read about it is the quantum computers that are supposed to be behind the medbeds are unhackable and are keyed to each person individually, and it's not supposed to be allowed to where like I can go and say, hypothetically go, Cynthia really upset me yesterday. I'm going to go into her med bed and make it so, it doesn't work. It doesn't go back as far as it's supposed to. It's supposed to be able to be altered.
Yeah. But I used to work in information security for for an international banking company, one of the top ones in the world. And I can assure you that there's no such thing as a secure system. And even a quantum so-called secure system, there are things like quantum bump codes and quantum, you can pretty much break into anything. There's no such thing as a secured system, whether it's AI, quantum, that doesn't necessarily guarantee anything. So it's a noble comment and, a great intention. I was definitely working to keep systems secure when I was involved in that, but that was the first lesson on day one. No such thing as a secured system. Impossible. And I can understand why. And I could see it when I was looking at what the Department of Defense was doing. They were conducting some artificial intelligence capture the flag games between like the world superpowers, between England and the United States of America and Israel. And these various AI programs were trying to break into each other's secured systems and grab some secret component within and bring it back. That's capture the flag. So you go into a system you're not supposed to be able to enter because it's quantum secured, and you grab something and you exit. And were they able to do it? Oh, yes. I'm not surprised. And, these are AI systems. They're learning as they go. And so they can use all kinds of methodologies, honeypots, Trojan horse, you name it. And they are amazing at that. So when people tell me like, oh, no worries, it's look, I worked in information security. So, I'm sorry.
No, and it's funny when you were saying, how the AI playing capture the flag, yep. It reminded me of that movie War Games.
Yeah.
Where he had to outsmart the AI by, I forget how they ended up doing it, but it was like, oh yeah, you're right. Okay, you win. It shut itself down, but
right.
It's scary too. The thought of here are all these military like older generation, and I don't mean like offense to that, but creating this system, and it took a teenager to beat the system. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not a good thing that we're creating something that we can't turn off. Right. We have to go and find a civilian to outsmart it. It's like, wait a minute, something's not right here.
Well, welcome to the real world.
Yeah. Just going Morpheus on us.
Yep.
So where can people find you if they had a Mandela effect that they wanted to ask you about, or questions about quantum jumping or shifting?
Well, I'm on YouTube, Facebook, and so forth, but the best way is send me an email, and that would be through my realityshifters.com. So it's Cynthia@realityshifters.com. I'm also part of the International Mandela Effect Conference, and so that's a big deal too. And we've got an email there, team@imec.world. That's imec.world. And that would be me plus the Christopher Anatra and Jerry Darkwolf Hicks, Shane Robinson from Unbiased and on the Fence. And so the four of us represent the International Mandela Effect Conference, and we're looking for speakers. So if someone's watching this and they are an author, or they just have a channel, or they want to talk about their own experiences, it's time to start, submitting an application to be a speaker, because we're accepting those, and it's a very exciting time. And then I share stories with realityshifters.com in my monthly newsletter, like I've been doing every month for going on almost 25 years now. Before there was a Mandela effect, I've been reporting on it.
That's really cool. And one more thing that I was just thinking about is I've heard, because I grew up through metaphysics, I didn't grow up through mainstream religion and all that. And so I'm familiar with the concept of we can go back and change how past events impact us today, rewrite timelines, not changing them, so to speak, but changing the effect of an event in the timeline.
Yes.
And I know that that causes, like, not to steal your term, but causes reality shifts.
Yes.
So if we're, say, like, I make like 4 changes doing work on my past lives, current lives, and and that causes major shifting,
Yes.
can that cause an effect to where, like a Mandela effect on
Yes.
a quantum level? And that's
Oh,
why
yeah.
they're becoming more prolific, is because more people are becoming awake, so to speak.
Yeah,
Not
exactly.
woke, awake.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. That can happen for sure. And I didn't mention Christopher Anatra's channel. He's got the Quantum Businessman channel. He is a businessman. He's a CEO for a food distribution company, and his customer base was noticing that there were these changes in the Haas avocados were spelled differently. They used to be HAAS, and now they're HASS. And there used to be Stouffer stovetop stuffing, and now it's Kraft stovetop stuffing. So, but getting back to your question, this is something, and I'm thinking of Christopher because he talks about timeline wars, and it's an idea. I don't know, exactly where we would see this, but sometimes if there was a war that happened, like World War II, for example, we see evidence now of some of the Nazi, presence in the United States that never used to be there. There have been a lot of World War II changes that came through with Mandela effects that seem strangely associated, almost as if someone is saying, like, okay, the war's not over, we're going to change the past. And so this can happen collectively. And that's really where the Mandela effects come in. Maybe not so much with you personally, although that could happen too, a ripple effect from you personally doing a small shift in your life. But it gets really big if you're changing, or if there's these forces, these levels of conscious agency that are collective, trying to change the outcome of World War II retroactively. And, and this is not disallowed from quantum physics. Therefore, it's possible, although people don't desire it. But there are those who are exerting some degree of influence there. So it's a very interesting question you raise.
And talking about like timeline wars, I know it's not your forte, but I have wondered, like, I don't know if this is an effect or not, but like talking about World War II,
Yeah.
Hess. Everyone talks about Hess and the role he played during World War II and the crimes he committed. And I was watching a show put on by the BBC, of all people, and they said Hess sat out over 3/4 of the war in prison in England because
What?
he went over and and he was going to crash his plane and bailed out, and a shepherd heard the plane crash and arrested him, and a soldier came over, a
Wow.
watchman, and said, "What's going on?" He goes, "This guy just crashed here." And they're like, "Well, this is Rudolph Hess." And so
Whoa.
he sat out the war in prison. But
Wild.
yet everyone talks about all these crimes he committed during the war. And so it's like, wait, what's the true history? What's really happened? Was he in the war, or was he in jail throughout the war?
Right. This is where it matters what we remember. And it seems like some historical events, like the JFK assassination, there's more and more and more movie clips, film footage that we've never heard of before. It was originally just the Zapruder film, and now all these other ones are coming out. This is another thing that we've covered on International Mandela Effect Conference, and also Christopher Onatra has really delved into this, World War II thing and JFK. It's very interesting. I don't have any answers here, but it's really interesting because it seems like the more you look at it, the more things change. And that doesn't make sense according to our old view of the way the world used to work. Like,
right. And it brings to my mind is we were taught in mainstream science
Uh-huh.
You don't go into the past, because if you step on an ant, you can, like, in the future when you come back, we may be German instead of Americans because
Right.
you stepped on that ant. And it's like, how can an ant cause that? But I get that what they're saying is, the most microscopic change you make can have a macro
Yeah.
wave that alters a huge thing.
And the author, Philip K. Dick, he was really into this, and he could see another alternate reality where the World War II was won instead of by the Allied forces. It was won by Japan and Germany, and that's where the show The Man in the High Castle, it's based on the Philip K. Dick vision, because he actually would see these things. He would see these alternate realities. He was one of the first people that really understood this Mandela effect before there was a name for it. He talked about it in France back in the 1970s. So want to give a shout out to Philip K. Dick, definitely front runner, pioneer there.
Yeah. So we have an update from RD about his darter.
Oh,
He
good.
says, I identified the fish online as a darter. It's supposed to live in streams in many states, including mine, but how did I never notice such a colorful fish? No
That's it.
one has noticed this one before. And he goes on and says, in fact, my friends didn't believe me until I showed them pictures of one online.
Yep.
There are several different types, but never heard of them until 2024.
Perfect. We got a Mandela effect here. This is like it's got all the markings of it. This is exactly what I would be looking for. So notice the official history says it's always been there. But your own personal experience is, wait a minute, I've never seen this before. My friends have never seen it. If it's so ubiquitous and so common and so naturally part of this ecosystem, what the heck? Yeah. Perfect. Great example. Thank you, RD.
And not bringing up an effect or anything, but talking about, like, not seeing this fish before.
Yeah.
I had a guest earlier this year who he operates and is kind of a paranormal cryptid investigator and operates out of the Columbia River Gorge area. And he has documentation that shows during World War II, the U.S. Department of Energy, of all things, were taking creatures and splicing them to make super creatures to protect a uranium plant further up into the north of the gorge. And their reasoning was the dolphins can't operate in that water because it's different. I think it was freshwater versus their saltwater habitat. So they actually put out, like, newspaper articles one day that said, hey, we have a super croc that's escaped from our facility. Do not approach. If you come across him, let us know.
Wow.
And I'm like, and he's like just sitting there telling this story. And I go, wait, back up. The government actually admitted it was messing with something. He goes, yeah. They took a scientist who created, I think it was a bass or some fish, and made it bigger and would grow faster and more meaty so that it would help feed people. And the government tapped his shoulder and said, hey, since you're able to splice and make this fish this way, we want you to take these creatures and splice them with human and create super soldier type animals to protect. And so that's what he did. But it's like, it's so weird. And to me, it was like the weirdest thing about it wasn't, that cryptids were being created. It was that our government admitted they were the ones creating them.
Wow. Well, it's new to me. Yeah, I don't know about that. That's interesting.
But I kind of wonder too, and the reason why I bring up the cryptids is I don't know if you study any of them or not, but as you were talking about species that were coming back from being extinct,
Yes.
could these be like the cryptids that we're seeing or creatures from the past that were supposedly gone and nobody ever knew about resurging? And
Yes, I'd say yes. Yes, yes, like the thunderbird being possibly a dinosaur, and Indians had seen that. I think that's interesting. That's a cryptid where, and people sometimes even, I think you're following it better than I am, but there have been some sightings of like pterodactyl kind of creatures or something like that. And that doesn't make any sense. Or the Loch Ness monster that looks like a very ancient dinosaur kind of a creature. So,
right, and what's interesting to me is the thunderbird, like you mentioned, is prolific in Alaska, which has a triangle effect to it
yeah.
of activity. And um, in the UK, I have a friend that's seen pterodactyl. Well, Rendlesham Forest
Oh my gosh.
and other high UFO activity is recorded there, incidents. And so I can't help wondering, is it ley lines that is causing the opening to where these are entering, or is it, something to do with the paranormal, UFOs being in the area that they're starting to become more visible and seen more, or what's causing all these different creatures to start being like, everyone's like, hey, you're on our radar.
I'm not an expert in that area, but the gentleman I mentioned, Jerry Darkwolf Hicks, he definitely loves he's been tracking the cryptids for quite like decades, and also UFOs. So he would be a good guest to explore that if you wanted to have him on your show.
I'll have to look him up.
Yeah.
Well,
I'd say I think you're onto something about the energy. I think there's definitely something to it, but I don't know what that would be, and I'm not following it as closely as you guys are.
right, and one day I will admit I sat down and in my mind I was like, I'm going to put this theory to the test, and I printed out a map of ley lines all around the globe. And then I went on and looked up like high paranormal locations. Well, the one thing that was in common was it was either on or very close or close to where two ley lines crossed. And so I was like, there's maybe something to this. And then I was like, about to come forward and say, hey, I just had this new theory, what do y'all think? And somebody goes, well, where ley lines cross, there's a lot of, the energy created a huge amount. So, there's more paranormal activity. And I was like, well, I just felt the energy just swept out underneath me. And I was like, well, I'm going to keep quiet about that now because that's not so.
It's an important thing to keep in mind. There was a book series written by Hamish Miller, and he wrote about the sun and the serpent. So I was reading back when he was alive. He's passed on now, but he was a dowser, and so he would use dowsing rods that look kind of like this, and it sort of spins like this. And
right.
You can look on YouTube, and there's some cute movies where he's dowsing with two dowsing rods while his friend is driving the car, and they're looking for the Michael and Mary lines across England. And so I was reading the Sun and the Serpent books back in the 80s and 90s, and I'd send a $20 bill across the pond over to England and order his next book, and he'd send it to me back at, before the internet was much of anything.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because what he was showing is exactly what you're talking about. The Michael and Mary lines where they intersect. That's where Avebury Henge is. That's where Stonehenge is. That's where the sacred ancient sites are. And that is where they would build the cathedrals. So absolutely. But now that's not cryptids. It's not necessarily UFOs. However, it's totally people selecting based on that intersection of energy.
Right.
So it's
And
very much in support of what you're saying.
I gotta say, I love when guests surprise me because I have done so much reading on ley lines and everything, but I have never heard the Michael and Mary line. I'm like, when you
Oh,
said that, I was like, wait, what?
oh, it's awesome. Yeah, check it out.
So I'm assuming it's after Archangel Michael and Mother Mary that they're named for.
Yeah. And I think the person who's handling this currently in England and he's active with groups because Hamish has passed on, but that would be Rory Duff, Roryduff. And he gets groups of people together and they're doing energy clearings and checking out these intersection spots, very much like what Hamish was doing. And Rory comes in from with an experience in mining, and he understands the earth energies and what's going on inside the earth. And he's fascinating, very interesting gentleman. He's written many books, and he is still alive. So he'd be the one to pursue the topic if you want to pick it up and see where it's going now.
All right, and I'm gonna take a step back for a moment because you have a lot of books. So I want to give you the opportunity to plug your books. So if people wanted to find them and read them, they could.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mentioned the Aura Advantage book, and that's where I talk about dowsing and how to douse your own energy field, how to make a dowsing rod with a coat hanger or 2 coat hangers, and got examples of how to do that and how to douse your energy or someone else's energy. You can actually see how healthy the person is. You can douse a house plant and so forth. It's a book filled with exercises, so you can figure out what your own energy colors are. You can work toward restoration of your health and work with healing for yourself with the colors. There's color therapy in the book. It's just wonderful. So there's that book. And then there's a shorter book, Shine with the Aura of Success, that I mentioned. And then I've got a children's book called Karen Kimball and the Dreamweaver's Web, which is fiction, but it's really based on true experiences that I've had talking with animals, working with discarnate spirits, and just really interesting stuff. So it's a young adult novel, it's like the real magic. Whereas I was annoyed at the time about Harry Potter, and I felt like, what's this? Why don't there's so much real magic. Why not cover that? So this ridiculous stuff. And I had a friend that kept saying, write one. So that's it. That's Karen Kimball and the Dreamweaver's Web. I've got a book about money and prosperity called High Energy Money. So it's a Reality Shifter's Guide to High Energy Money. And it details, it's a very small book, but it's powerful. And it can help you pinpoint if you've got issues with prosperity, where they are in your own energy field, how you can work with the beliefs that might be causing some kind of an issue, and how you can determine what kind of a money manifester you are. It has to do with your beliefs. So if you believe you need to earn money, then you're sort of down one sort of a path. If you're like me and it's okay if money just shows up out of nowhere, that's my favorite kind. And that's where money miracles happen. The book is full of those examples and exercises. And then of course, some people prefer investing. You can have all sorts of high energy money with a good improved relationship with money. And the book is, again, full of those exercises. And then the other 2 big books I've got are Reality Shifts, When Consciousness Changes the Physical World. And that one is amazing because it's kind of like the intuitive's guide to this. So if you're just sort of like, I want to feel it, I'm already experiencing synchronicity, I love that stuff, then that's the book for you. If you're a bit skeptical and if you're a bit in your left brain, kind of rational, analytical, then there's Quantum Jumps. And that's introducing the way that you can actually exert mind-matter interaction influence in your daily life with just really simple laboratory tested things, like I'm just searching real quick okay, I found it. This is a clean pen. You can put it in your mouth, and just that action will help cheer you up, believe it or not. It sounds stupid, but I go through the science of that. And so I start with simple things like things you can do to literally jump into a different timeline. but you can also put your hands on your heart and suddenly improve your ability to relate to others. Point at your head, get smarter. These things sound ridiculous, but they're, like I said, laboratory tested, and I've got all the evidence in the book to show that. So it starts off kind of normal like that, and then me being me, of course, it ends up way out there by the end of quantum jumps. So, because there's some cool stuff we can all do where you can totally like we're talking about today, play with time, and there are teleportation examples, bilocation, all sorts of fun things. So those are my top books right now, and I'm working on the next book, which will be out this year, about the Mandela effect and its society. It's not out yet, but it'll be 2024. So coming soon.
Very cool. And that one ought to be interesting, because even I was like trying to look up on the internet like different effects to kind of put a little sub video together.
Yeah.
Like part 2 to one that I had done. It was like, I was a little disappointed because a lot of them were ones that I already had, but then there were some of them that I was like, yeah, Monopoly, guy looks like the Peanuts guy, and I'm like, the Planters Peanut guy, and I'm like, huh? And they're like, yeah, he's got the eye piece, or he doesn't have the eye piece, and I was like, and at first my mind is like, well, logos change, and that's where my mind goes, and it's like, and I'm just curious at some point to go, is that me trying to talk myself out of an effect, or is it my mind going, no, this isn't an effect, and move on, let's go find a true effect.
Well, some of the most convincing effects are the personal ones, where there's no other person that can prove or disprove, but for sure. Like my motor memory always would turn a dial a certain way on my laundry machine, and then one day it was completely different. Or I would fastidiously lock all the doors on my car, which did not have an automatic locking mechanism. I walk away for 10 minutes, come back, and all the doors are unlocked. And that nobody else was there with me. Nobody else had a key to my car. That's impossible, but it happened. So, and you might say like, well, that could be, you can explain it away like something else. I'm telling you, that's the same thing. You're walking into a different reality. And I've had cuts and burns just instantly healed on my body that were there. I saw them. I've had witnesses, and they're just completely cleared up. That totally counts too. These all count. These are mind matter interactions where we're suddenly in like a totally different reality, whether we've reality shifted into it, quantum jumped into it, whatever you want to call it. And together, when we collectively experience it, that's the Mandela effect. So we can quibble about it. We can say, like, I'm not sure I believe it. That's fine. But find the ones you do believe in. Find the ones that are real for you. And take a look at it.
You mentioning that, it kind of makes me think I do have one personal to me, because, like I mentioned, with my leg.
Yeah.
A month after the surgery, I was like telling the orthopedic, hey, put me in physical therapy. The leg is healed. It's good. And he would go, well, it does look good, but I want to play it safe. Let's wait another month. And then the next month, I'm like, okay, put me in PT. My leg, is ready. Well, I don't want to risk, damaging the leg, so let's wait a month. And I can't, and it's like I'm wondering now, because my body, we always laugh, would be like, heals really fast. Is it that it did heal really fast, or was it a quantum healing? And therefore, like you're saying, the effect where everyone's looking like this shouldn't be, so we're going to operate that it's not, even though it is.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the healing, we see lots of examples of this, and doctors do too. It's, they would call it just case studies. They'd say, not anecdotal evidence. I don't like that term. Here I'm riffing off of Dr. Larry Dossey, who I think in some of his books like reinventing medicine, for example. He says that let's not talk about anecdotal evidence. What's that? Let's talk about case studies. If you're a doctor and you're noticing spontaneous remission, where a person walks in and, like you, like there's no reason for them to heal this fast, but suddenly something has happened. And if you're acknowledging it as a doctor, go ahead and acknowledge it. I know they want to be cautious, like in your case, give it another month, because their mind can't quite get around this idea. Like you could have be completely healed. Like why? How?
Yeah.
But doctors see it all the time. They absolutely do.
Well, and the other thing too was my parents told me, and after they told me, I remembered it, was before the surgery, him saying, I hope I can save the leg, to when I woke up, he goes, I was able to put everything together perfectly, and there was no muscle damage, no tendon damage, and they had to cut one nerve. That was it to be able to perform the surgery.
Oh.
And I was just like, I'm on cloud nine because I had a really cool, one of the best orthopedics out of luck. And now I'm like, I have to sit there and go, could it be that somehow when he opened it, the quantum jumped?
Yes.
And the body was like, hey, we're going to.
How good can it get? Yeah, totally. And it can make a difference when you've got people who are intending for you. How good can it get from Michael? This needs to be perfect. He needs to come through this just fine. When you've got all that shared intent entangled with all that love, it totally can make a difference for you. You can kind of be carried, lifted up by it, like a team lifting a teammate and holding you up high,
Yeah,
like Michael.
Then what was funny is he goes, well, your tibia plateau was missing, so we created, we used your stem cells and, we're growing another one, so,
Wow.
we'll replace that bone. And so now my leg has like this weird feeling from one leg to the other. And my best friend, who's a recreational therapist, goes, did they scan your other leg? Because not everybody has a tibial plateau. He thought mine had been disintegrated in the injury, so now I may have an extra bone.
Wow, that's interesting. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, and before you go, I'd like to ask, and I do this with a lot of my guests, is from your journey through everything, through life, what is one golden nugget you would like to leave the audience with?
Oh, gosh. Everything is listening to our thoughts and our feelings. The universe, the cosmos is listening. You might think it's not, it totally is. And so when you line up what you need with what you love, with what you're envisioning, and you ask the questions that you most want to live the answers to, you can totally experience how good can it get. It's amazing things can happen. So I just want people to hold that idea, like maybe that's possible. I know this is not a common principle. It's not typically taught in school, but I wish it was. I think the whole world would be a better place if people knew this. I think some of the most powerful people in the world do know it, and there obviously has been kind of a glomming on to that, but I'd like to share it. So ask the questions you want to know the answers to. You want to live the answers to. That's why I ask, how good can it get? Because that is an amazing question, and you can add it to anything else you're doing. It can pull you out of a tailspin. If you're already doing great, it can take it even higher. I mean, it just makes things better. So highly recommend that.
Thank you. That was really cool, actually. And even I hadn't thought about that and going, man, I need to start doing that.
Thank you.
So,
yes.
Thank you for that.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to the audience in the chat room, for those of you watching. Thank you, Cynthia, for coming on and having trust in me that, everything's going to be on a positive up and up note, and that you're in good hands with the show, because
Thank
And
you.
I just want to leave everyone with have a wonderful day, night, wherever you are in the world. Fill each day with love. Share that love and light with the world, and add into like Cynthia's saying, and view every situation with love and let that love shine, and ask before you react. Where is this coming from, and view your reactions with love. So, good night, everyone.
That's beautiful. Love you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Love you too.